Hello, welcome to Afterwards on Book TV. My name is David Brooks. I'm a columnist for the New York Times, and I am joined today by an author, Gwen Ifill, and we are nominally going to talk about her book. No, we are going to talk about her book, Breakthrough Politics and Race in the Age of Obama, though I think of this show as retribution, because for many years, and I'm sure the audience will be familiar with this, Gwen has hosted many question and answer shows, Washington Week most prominently, but also the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, in which she is the one asking the questions, and that ends here.
I'm kind of terrified.
Yeah, right. Now I ask the questions, Gwen has to give the answers. Let me first give a quick bio of who Gwen is, and like the professional journalist that I am, I pulled this off Wikipedia, so no. You can...
I'll be jumping in whenever there's something
You jump in, but you are the moderator of Washington Week. You are a senior correspondent at the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, where I am a weekly analyst. You are the fifth child of an African Methodist Episcopal minister. Sixth. Already, we've gotten an error. But in your childhood, you grew up along the East Coast, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Buffalo, New York City. Mm-hmm. All that's correct. You went to Simmons College. And in your journalistic lightning rise, you worked at the Boston Herald, the Baltimore Sun, the Washington Post, the New York Times. You escaped from our publication to NBC, and now at PBS.
30-year lightning rise.
And that's all true.
Yes, it's all true.
Okay, and now you have written your first book, Breakthrough. And we are taping this show the day after the inauguration of Barack Obama, and you spent the afternoon while some of us were in a nice warm studio. You were out there actually doing reporting.
Yeah.
And I want to first ask you about that event and how that fits in with your book, but I should preface by saying you did a fantastic report interviewing people on the Mall.
Thank you.
And I know it's fantastic because Mark Shields and I were following you, and the worst thing happened to us, which is that we were watching your report, and you were interviewing two women in particular, one, I think, a 105-year-old woman, and then another woman on the Mall who was talking about what this day meant for her son. And while she's talking, tears are coming to Jim Lehrer, Mark Shields, in our eyes. And because we're manly men, we can't admit that. So we sort of get automatic allergies in the studio. We start blowing our noses. I discover lint in my eye. But you were out there on the Mall.
Oh, it was amazing.
And so describe, first of all, your reflections on the day,
yeah,
and then how it fits into the larger picture.
It was like shooting fish in a barrel in the Mall yesterday. Everyone we talked to would just start spouting off in these long and eloquent, perfectly formed sentences about what this meant to their lives. And all you had to do is walk up and say hello, and they would start talking. And so this woman in particular was toward the very end, right at the oath-taking. We had talked to a lot of people all morning. And my cameraman turned around from one direction, I turned around from the other, and we both saw this woman fall to her knees on the Mall and start crying. And needless to say, cameraman started shooting her. And then afterward, we ran after her and chased her and said, can we talk to you about this? Now, this is one of the beautiful things about people who follow politics. These are PBS viewers. So they immediately see you and say, oh, and start to tell you these things. And when she was kind of funny, because when I first asked her, why are you crying? She said, well, first, I've been crying all day. First, because it was so cold. And then she said, you're going to get me in trouble here. And she started crying again. And it was impossible not to talk to someone like that who said, I have a son, and you see, I'm going to get verklempt thinking about it. I have a son, and now he knows that he doesn't have to be a rapper. He doesn't have to be an athlete. He can be whatever he wants. The roof is off. The sky is open. He can do whatever he wants. No excuses. It's a theme which I've been hearing all inauguration, in the run-up to the inauguration, especially from African Americans, saying, we don't have excuses anymore. Sure, we were denied things. Sure, we had to fight for things. But here is a man who, and it's exactly the message he's sending. He's saying to you, government ought to help, and I think government ought to help you, but you ought to give back too. This is something which not only do African Americans embrace, but it turns out all Americans embrace. If there's been tension between the races over the years, it's had to do with the fact that someone thought an unfair demand was being made of them. How dare you make me feel guilty for the sins of my ancestors? Or why should I give you an affirmative action advantage when my child doesn't get it? There's always been this tension. And what Obama represents on one level, he represents many things, of course, but is the idea that we're going to try to get past that and talk about the things that we all need to benefit from government, not just one group or another,
Right.
And oddly enough, people have completely embraced that. So that came out a million different ways, and not just from the black mother, but also from the 105-year-old woman who heard W.E.B. Du Bois speak when she was a student at Fisk University in 1926, you know. Also from the white middle-class family from Champaign, Illinois, and from Boulder, Colorado, who came all this way because they just wanted to stand in the cold on the mall for hours at a time on crazy metro trains, just so they can say they've been there. It was an amazing day.
Yeah, and that, in the book, and I think the book is really about the Exodus story, or at least a chapter in the Exodus story of the Civil Rights Revolution, the different generations. And then the book, and in my mind, the core story of the book is that Barack Obama is not alone.
Right.
That a lot of people had similar, not the same obvious experience, but similar experience, similar rises, and he is part of a cohort, and you're telling the story of that cohort.
Absolutely. You know, the interesting thing about this book, and people don't believe me, but I didn't want to set out to write an Obama book at all. Well, they believe me now that they can actually read it. Right. But I set out to write a book that had been knocking around in my head in bits and pieces for years, which as a reporter at all the places you named, I'd encountered time and time again, serendipitously, people who were breaking through, whether they were breaking through to be elected dog catcher for the first time, or a mayor for the first time, or a governor for the first time. And as I started kind of searching my mind through all these people, I thought there's a common thread. And so it had become a little bit commented on, was that there were these Ivy League young men mostly who had broken through, but no one had kind of said, where's that coming from, and are they it? Is Barack Obama the one and off? Is there only going to ever be one black governor of Virginia? Is there something else coming behind? And it turned out the more people I talked to, the more they would say, oh, have you heard about this person? And that person would send me to someone else. And it turned out there was this great kind of untold story of folks who are, the story doesn't go, I mean, it's not a very long book. The story doesn't go deep yet. This is still a one generation breakthrough. Deval Patrick talks about how when he was a kid in the South Side, you know, he had nothing. His break was going to a private school in Massachusetts and not even realizing when he arrived there that when they said bring a blue jacket, they meant a blazer. He brought a windbreaker. I mean, this guy didn't know anything from that kind of life. But his daughter has traveled the world and takes it all for granted. So in one generation, things have changed so dramatically. But what we're in the lip of is another generation, which is going to change again. And so Barack Obama gives us an excuse to look at all these people, but it doesn't end there.
Yeah. Well, how do we understand, you've got the civil rights generation, the King generation, I guess Jackson, a little younger, but it's Jackson generation. How do you've got that generation, and then really the Obama generation, which are a lot of the people in your book, Deval Patrick, Cory Booker. How do you understand the difference between those two generations and their experience?
It's part of the most interesting part of the book for me was talking to some of the civil rights veterans, because some of them embraced this notion. Joseph Flower, who gave the benediction at the inauguration, he embraced this notion. He's 87 years old. He got that at some point you hand over the baton, that you don't hold, as someone said, hold on to the gavel to the grave. At some point you've got to pass on. And he embraced Barack Obama, for instance, very early on. On the other hand, there are others who are typically thought of as civil rights leaders who have said, oh, there's nothing new here. We've seen this before, nothing to look at, move on. Al Sharpton, who supported Obama, was wise enough and politically mature enough to do it quietly, knowing it could hurt him. But he also said, listen, I remember when a generation of black mayors came to power and we thought they were going to solve all our problems, and they didn't. So he doesn't necessarily subscribe to it. More famously conflicted was Jesse Jackson, who ran for president twice, who managed to always, just at the wrong moment, say something skeptical about Barack Obama, which of course we all jumped on. But the truth was, people don't give Jesse Jackson credit for being a complicated individual too. He, on one, was perfectly capable of appreciating Barack Obama's accomplishments, and perfectly capable, his daughter is one of Michelle Obama's best friends. And on the other hand, perfectly capable of feeling a little bit, well, wait a second, I was the one who knocked down that wall. I was the one who challenged. No one's listened to me. And more importantly, is this breakthrough candidate going to speak for the community? It's going to speak for the underserved and underspoken for. That's what I got into this to do, he feels. So he feels he was grievously misunderstood in that process.
Well, this is a theme that goes through your book. This decision to support Clinton or Obama, for every individual in the book, was not always a hard decision, but a key decision. And it revealed a lot about where they were coming from.
Exactly. Well, it's politics in the end. Michael Nutter, the mayor of Philadelphia, said he never had any problem supporting Hillary Clinton, in part because that was not what people were judging him on in Philadelphia. He had bigger fish to fry. So people would look at him and say, I hear you're supporting Hillary Clinton. I don't like that, but whatever. Or what are you doing to bring down the crime rate? And then old-fashioned politics. You know, he was not supported by the grand old Black Guard in Philadelphia.